All right, Daniel. So SpaceX had its first earnings call last night. We both listened, and it seems like the street is most upset about the AI capital spent. But on the call, we heard that they're getting a very quick return on the spend.
Yes, yeah. So SpaceX reported its first quarter after becoming a public company. A lot of headlines were on the AI capex, which were greater than expected. But CFO on the call, Brett, identified that they are getting less than a 1 year payback period. So it's treated like a COGS expense. So from our perspective, we're big believers in investing in growth, and when you have capex coming through with 1 year returns, it makes sense to really aggressively invest in the capex, particularly given some of the monetization that they mentioned on the call that they're getting on a per gigawatt basis.
Right, and they said that they expect 30 to 50 billion dollars per gigawatt monetization, which is like already somewhat higher than the industry average, which is around 15. As we know, Frank Downing, another research director here, has published. And it also seems like there's like a little bit of a reversal because I feel like we've seen some X comments that Elon has put out there that almost about terrestrial compute that to me suggested like, oh, this pricing, this whole uh, business line or opportunity for them like might be more short term. But it seemed like on the call they're actually leaning into this. Did you get that idea too?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, even the $100 billion ARR or annual recurring revenue target by the end of the year, that was a surprise, I think, to most people. And it seems like the infrastructure as a service, leasing the compute, is likely going to play a big part of that. And to your point, Tasha, goes kind of against some of the commentary Elon said on the short term deals they've signed.
Right, right. So, I mean, like going back to CapEx, I mean, clearly they're seeing such an opportunity here that they actually think it's worth leaning in.
Yeah.
I think from our perspective, we'd probably agree.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And then one thing I think that wasn't really touched on and is really important is the next test flight, flight test 14 for Starship. We've said so many times Starship is critical to all of SpaceX's $28.5 trillion TAM. The next one is extremely notable because it's going to be the first time they attempt to reach orbit. They're going to deploy commercial V3 satellites, which have a lot more bandwidth than the existing ones. And coupling that with the fact that pending regulatory approval, they're going to try and catch the upper stage of the ship. We've spoken so many times about why that's important for reusable rockets and declining launch costs.
Yes. So, two things on that. So, what you mentioned reusability. Your research suggests that today's launch costs on a per kilogram basis are around $1,000. Long term, that could move to sub 200, sub $100 per kilogram. And back to AI, that's what really enables orbital data centers here. You need launch costs to come down, and they really only come down to those like low hundreds of dollars per kilogram with a full reusability.
Yep, exactly. Yep, it's very hard to get to the $100 per kilogram point when you're losing half of the rocket and it explodes after deploying the payload. So really, that's a critical milestone that we'll be looking out for. I think Elon said it's going to be potentially at the end of this month. So very exciting times, only in a couple of weeks now, and really critical to the overall SpaceX story.
Right. And you also mentioned, the V3 sat, there's more bandwidth on this sat. And, like doing some rough math, basically, if you look at the number of, V2 sats that go up on a Falcon 9 today versus, the 60 at scale that they plan to send up on a Starship, that, roughly like a 20x improvement in the bandwidth, like per journey, right? And I think if you look at what they have available today, something like that's like, one Starship at scale would be like an 8% bump on all the bandwidth that they've launched. So it's like really monumental for Starlink as well, as you said, that they really get this off the ground.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, to your point, like, why do people care about bandwidth? Well, really, what's funded SpaceX's journey today to Starlink, it's cash flow generative. The more bandwidth you have up there, the more customers you can serve. It's growing extremely rapidly. The service, they now have over 12 million subscribers, and that continues to grow. So it's likely that Starlink adoption will accelerate with these V3 satellites that potentially could be launched by the end of this month.
Yeah, yeah, really exciting. And I feel like another key point that we heard was this idea of distributed terrestrial infrastructure. Um, maybe why don't we get into that? So this is, through what they're already selling into customers for Starlink, they will have infrastructure for mobile.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So Starlink's direct to cell service, which is really in the nascent stage currently, is internet connectivity from a satellite to your phone. The problem with that is when you're in buildings or in urban regions, the connectivity isn't as effective. So what SpaceX is potentially proposing is when a customer buys the broadband solution for Starlink and they put a dish on their roof or ceiling or wherever it may be, that there will be an additional piece of hardware that can act like a localized cell tower. So this helps surpass the problem with the current solution where it doesn't really work too well in urban regions. And this all plays into really the bandwidth that they or the spectrum, excuse me, that they've acquired through EchoStar will likely play a key role here too. So that was kind of a new tidbit that we heard for the first time on the call.
Right. And so that was important because, we knew that they needed to do something about getting additional infrastructure to get like a good mobile service up and running. What I also love about this is that it's very akin to the Tesla model of you get your customer to help you out and sort of to launch, some piece of your infrastructure. Like that's what they have done for a long time with FSD, right?
Yeah, literally, it's kind of like a copy and paste of the Tesla vehicles. The fact that Tesla's been gathering billions of miles for several years has given them a huge advantage as it relates to data, which is important for their AI system. And it's, to your point, it's pretty much copy and paste here as it relates to Starlink, using your customers' purchases with additional hardware to really enhance the service for everyone and help SpaceX continue to grow its lead as it relates to satellite connectivity.
All right. And what else happened on the call? What should we note here?
I think one thing, kind of a couple of quick tidbits. One, Elon said potentially the AI satellite Starmind could launch next year as part of the S1 that was touted for 2028, so perhaps
Yeah.
an acceleration there. And then maybe the most notable point as it relates to the chip is the exclusivity with NVIDIA.
Right.
Somewhat surprising that a lot of analysts didn't probe that a bit more as it relates to what's their plan for Terafab, given the exclusivity. Perhaps it's like a near-term exclusive agreement. And I know Tasha, Elon has said, I think AI 8 Tesla's chip is likely the one that's going to be the one that'll be on the AI satellite. So that's maybe several years out. So perhaps just a bridge to that. But it definitely seemed like Elon was using the earnings call as a signaling to NVIDIA that they intend to buy a lot of chips over the next coming years to support the AI satellite initiative.
Yeah, he seemed very, proud to talk about that partnership, proud to talk about the fact that, they think that they've like solidified some of the, future capacity from NVIDIA here, which is, of course, super important in a world where getting access to chips is actually like difficult and scarce. So.
Yeah, and even just building on that, access to chips. Another question is access to power. They're hoping to scale
Yeah.
to 2 gigawatts end of this year, I believe, and then between 5 to 10. I think Elon said closer to 10 gigawatts of compute next year. And if you speak to any of the hyperscalers, access to power is a big bottleneck. It seems like gas turbines are going to be a near-term solution, and I know it's
Mhm.
reported Elon, I think, personally acquired a gas turbine company a couple of weeks ago. So it'll be interesting to track where the power will come from, because they're quite aggressive scaling goals in such a short period of time when power seems to be really scarce around the world at the moment.
Right. So they had said, let's say they build out on 10 gigawatts of compute, they would
Yeah,
basically build double the power, like 20 gigawatts. So,
yeah,
you're commenting on the fact that it's that's difficult to do because this is another thing with like huge lines,
yeah.
for years to come to get access to generators and to get power sources there. So it's a question of like how do they know that they've secured it, or how will they secure it if they haven't already done so?
Exactly, yeah. And just to give the viewers context, like 20 gigawatts, that's 20 large nuclear reactors. So we're not talking about an immaterial amount of power here. It's quite significant in a short period of time. So that's something we'll be looking at for over the next coming weeks.
On the 10 gigawatts of power, I was talking to Frank, and he brought up this great point, which is, and we knew this, but that commitment to build 10 gigawatts by the end of next year, they had said, is
Yes.
extremely fast. And so to put that in perspective, CoreWeave is targeting 8 gigawatts by 2030. So Tesla would do that, just in the next 2 years, let's say, less than 2 years. That's pretty amazing compared to the rest of the industry. So, really, really, really highlights the fact that they're able to build these data centers extremely quickly and also monetize them very quickly.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. I sometimes you hear figures like that and you think, how is that going to be possible? But how Elon lays out the argument that they're building this large rocket that wants to blow up all the time, and the engineers are competent enough to keep it in one piece. That building out a data center is like a walk in the park for them. So, yeah, we're very excited to see how they can execute relative to that goal.
All right. Anything else in earnings that we missed, Daniel?
No, I think that was it. It was a very exciting first public call for SpaceX. It's yeah, I thought Gwyn and Brett, the CFO and the president, also handled all the questions very, very competently, and looking forward to the future ones over the next coming quarters.
Yes. All right. And tune in to our coverage then.